Star Wars Death Troopers. Many people have made Star Wars synonymous in the world. This story in particular explores a far more sensitive theme to its traditional premise. Let's see Death Troopers, a story about Star Wars zombies, but something interesting to a very popular mythos. Aboard the Imperial prison barge The Purge, making its way to a moon penal colony in a certain system that is a bit unknown, Trig Longo and his older brother Kale Longo had just watched their father die at the hands of Jared Sartoris, one of the hostile prison police officers of the Purge. Their father sold weapons to inmates. After their father's death, the boys attempted to make a sale with the Delphinian Face Gang and their leader Hermes, who had killed their previous contact and was planning to kill the Longo boys. Predicting this, Kale tried to strike a deal with the Delphinian by giving him the weapons free of charge. Hermes would not have this, as he promised his goons he would let them kill the boys. Kale reacts by ripping piercings out of Mrs. face. Then the Longo boys run back as he bleeds out and yells, and they run safely to their cell. Jared Sartoris, who is the captain of the guard, is called into the warden's office. Warden Bisley Cloth explains to Sartoris that the Purge's engines are breaking down, but the derelict Star Destroyer is in the vicinity. Sartoris questions why the Empire would leave a Star Destroyer in the middle of space, but Cloth nonetheless orders Sartoris to retrieve spare parts of the Star Destroyer to fix the Purge's engines, all while he stays in his office. Sartoris really hates the warden because he seems to do everything outside of his volition. Nevertheless, he goes. Before he leaves though, the warden criticizes Sartoris' interrogation techniques because his subjects keep dying, like Von Longo. Sartoris recommends that he cancel his duty on the Purge and leave to board the Star Destroyer. Zahara Cody is the chief medical officer on the prison barge, aided by her B-21 surgical droid. Waste is an outcast among the Imperial personnel due to her daily interactions with the inmates. She has attachments to some inmates and would rather be around them than the Empire. After seeing Sartoris kill Von Longo, Zahara handed in her resignation and planned to leave the Empire for good at the barge's next stop. She also had a connection to the Longo boys since she carried their father's last request to bring them to him. Sartoris takes 10 men aboard the Vector, the name of the ship. They split so Sartoris and his men can find the parts, while another group finds the medical bay. The men explore the Purge for a while, and one of them finds a large vat. They're weirded out as there are some peach organisms located in there. They see, thinking it's some exotic experiment or whatever, and realize that these are actually lungs, human lungs breathing in unison. And the men also see that black tanks are taking some kind of liquid out of there. They are surprised by this, but all of a sudden, the lungs start screaming. The guard who witnesses this attempts to contact the other team who's already preparing to leave. Realizing he can't get through them due to the loud noise, he attempts to leave, but realizes he has visitors. Sartoris' group get back and are ready to escape to the Purge. One guard is coughing violently and an engineer is vomiting. The group rushes to the Purge's medical bay. All of the guards now coughing and vomiting, then inmates and other guards begin coughing and vomiting. Soon the entire medical bay is full. Sartoris, however, is unaffected by this new virus. In the medical bay, Zahara works to deal with the illness. Waste concludes that the virus only activates after there are enough infected cells, and the body cannot defend against it. Zahara realizes that their containment measures are useless and rips her isolation suit off, knowing that everyone is going to die. She tries to make everyone comfortable just because they succumb to their fate. Waste notes Zahara has yet to be sick and she must be immune. Using her blood, they create an antivirus to stop the sickness, but at this point it's almost too late. The Longo boys are stuck in their cell, watching everyone die around them. As the noises subside, they begin screaming to be let out. The cell door is open and they walk out. Forgetting Miss is in the next cell, Miss attacks Kale and is about to kill him when Trig jumps on his back and tries choking him. Miss flips Trig off and is about to kill Trig when a blade comes through Miss's mouth. Kale states that he was attacked with it and they both get up of the cell block. When they reach the end, they realize that their friend Wembley let them out but died shortly after. They start running around for the escape pods. In the next block, they see a young Wookiee in a cell with his dead family around him. Trig insists they help the young one unlock the doors. They try to get the youngster to go with them, but the little one stays and his family and holds them. The boys leave, and when they reach the end of the cell block, they hear the Wookiee screaming and sounds that sound like munching, slurping, and crunching, like someone is eating it. Freaked out, they leave. Sartoris finds that he too is immune and goes to the warden's office. He picks up 211 blaster rifle and kills anyone who seems infected near him. At the warden's office, Sartoris discovers that the warden is infected. Sartoris demands the launch codes for the escape pods. The warden gives him and asks Sartoris if he wants to know what he scored on the psychological exam. Sartoris says, "I think we both know the answer to that question." Pulls both triggers on the blasters, disintegrating the warden's head. Zahara decides to get her newly created antivirus to help anyone alive on the barge. At the bridge, she initiates a bioscan to find that there are 6 people alive, with 2 in solitary. She reluctantly goes down to solitary, tripping over the bodies on the way. She finds and pockets a note that a guard was going to give to his wife. She reaches the first solitary door, blaster in hand, but finds no one there. She checks this and confirms that there are very few survivors left. One on the armory, Sartoris, several going up in the Gen Pop, who are the Kale brothers, the Longo brothers, and the 2 in solitary alongside her. She's confused and still decides to check. Then she opens the next one, blaster in hand, but finds no one there. 2. As soon as she opens the next door, a huge Wookiee, grown up, comes out and screams ready to attack, but she calms him down. Zahara unlocks the next door and a man comes out and introduces himself as Han Solo and the Wookiees as Chewbacca. The 2 are well-known characters of the Star Wars universe and are hence key protagonists. The 2 are initially defiant against taking the antivirus until they see the bodies around the corner. Han takes it first, then Chewbacca. Chewbacca did not receive it in time and starts showing symptoms: screaming, delirium, and a swollen throat. He begins to pass out and sees horrific visions of his past. But Zahara saves him by emptying the blisters starring around his neck with a syringe. The swelling subsides and Chewbacca returns to normal. As they return to the medical bay, they discover the bodies Zahara had stumbled over are missing. They find the medical bay now completely empty, with waste on the ground in critical condition. They ask him but are unable to get anything, as he only says gibberish, but he still managed to say a few words that make sense. They woke up. They just eat, 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 repeating it like a broken record. Obviously confused, they ask about the bodies, but nothing more he is able to say. Zahara turns around to discover that Han and Chewie are gone. Confused, she follows their footsteps, which are made due to the dirt in their shoes. Kale and Trig get to the escape pod and are trying to activate the launch codes when Sartoris appears. He tells them both to get out. Gets in, activates the launch codes, and launches away. Kale quickly realizes that there is another escape pod opposite of the position they are in. As they start running that way, they feel the thing that was eating the baby Wookiee is following them. At the other escape pod, they run into Han and Chewie. The boys hold their blasters at them, but Han and Chewie disarm them. Zahara then arrives and tells them that they are getting out together. They realize that the escape pod's hatch has been sealed by security measures. Han, Chewie, and Zahara go to the bridge to disable it, while Kale and Trig stay to the escape pod. The Longo brothers hear something outside and Kale goes to investigate. Trig hears something moving outside the escape pod, scratching at the door. Despite his pleas, Zahara opens the pod. When Kale comes back, he sees his brother is gone and the escape pod is opened. He frantically searches for him, ultimately finding him in a maintenance tunnel, scratched up and scared. Kale hears things moving him through the tunnel. Kale picks up Trig and returns to the bridge. Zahara opens the escape pod, but it doesn't hear anything from the back at the comlink. Soon after, the bridge's computer says that there are more life forms since the last bioscan. They look at the bioscan map and realize that all life forms are headed to the bridge. What? I thought they were dead. Zahara is still shocked to see that multiple versions of them are all coming to life and going. Soon after, Kale bursts through with Trig in his arms and yells for them to run. They run to the turbolift, which leads to the Star Destroyer, and activate it. Trig comes to see his father. Trig runs for his dad and Kale pulls him back, but their dad gets Kale and bites him on the leg. Realizing that their dad is instead a zombie, Kale shoots them with his blaster, but loses it in the process as his father tries to attack him. Kale barely manages to take Trig and takes him up there. Kale awakes in the Star Destroyer's hangar bay. Kale realizes that he's been bit and blood starts spurting from the wound when he stands up. Zahara says that she and Kale would stay here while Han, Chewie, and Trig go to the bridge to start the engines. Struggling with having just seen his dead father bite his brother, Trig reluctantly leaves with Han and Chewie. As Han and Chewie and Trig walk along the corridor, the ceiling explodes and zombies pour out. The group runs away from the horde and ends up running in circles. Back at the turbolift, Kale yells at Zahara to cut off his leg. She notices that his leg is turning gray, and soon after she realizes it has moved to his abdomen. Zahara cuts into his stomach and pulls out a big infectious cell, which is still moving and trying to find the opening. Zahara disposes of it and cleans up Kale's wounds. However, when she does, the zombie creatures start coming up and yelling as if full of hate. They realize that these zombies are feeling the thing dying and are trying to get to them. Realizing that she's just made a big mistake, they try to run. However, Kale gets shot and unfortunately dies. Seeing this, Zahara, in shock and drenched in blood, runs off without Kale. Han, Chewie, and Trig arrive at the top of the main turbine with a small catwalk to cross. Trig decides to stay behind while Han and Chewie press forward. Trig thinks he's seeing Kale going towards the door and runs after him, not knowing that he's dead. While Han and Chewie find a baby Wookiee crying in the corner, Chewie insists that they open the door, where they find 3 Wookiees eating human remains. The Wookiees turn around and run towards Han and Chewie. Han instinctively starts blasting and is able to kill them, but the baby Wookiee jumps on Han's back and starts clawing at him. However, Chewie does try to save Han but is a bit reluctant to kill a child. But realizing that the child is dead and knowing his best friend would meet the same fate, he reluctantly shoots the child's head open. After a moment of silence and Han apologizing to Chewbacca but Chewbacca ultimately forgiving him, go back to fix the engines. Zahara and Kale realize that the zombies are coming up the turbolift. She grabs Kale under the arm and drags him across the hangar. The zombies start coming out of the turbolift, equipped with blasters. They start shooting at them, and they go wild with inaccurate shots. Adrenaline pumping, Zahara ignores Kale's screams to drop him and keeps dragging him. It turns out he didn't actually die. The shot missed him but did injure him. And a blaster bolt hits Kale on the side of the face, this time actually killing him. Zahara now, who actually realizes that Kale is gone and now completely stuck in a tumultuous zone, is unable to do anything else. She abandons Kale. And as a result, is full of grief. Zahara then finds a lab where she's attacked by a zombie, an undead researcher. She sticks an antivirus syringe in his head, not knowing that it has an antivirus, and it briefly starts to act human again and scratches out Blackwing in the ground. The cure doesn't last long and attacks Zahara again. She is saved when another B-1 droid that reminds her of waste destroys the zombie. The droid leads her to the console and telling her what's happening. It tells her that the ship, Vector, had been in the control of Lord Vader, an Imperial guard and commander of the Imperial Army who ended up sending a secret experiment. This virus leaked, killing most of the crew, and as a result led to the events. Zahara thanks the droid and leaves, accidentally calling it waste but then correcting herself. Sartoris wakes inside the pod. He realizes that the Star Destroyer's tractor beam had sucked him into the pod. Hearing blaster fire, he jumps outside and finds zombies all around him. He enters an abandoned X-Wing and fires. The ship skids across the hangar floor and crashes into an Imperial shuttle. He climbs into the shuttle and finds 4 men. One of the men, Commander Gorister, explains that the outbreak resulted from a weapon that the Empire created and that the zombies can learn what works, what doesn't, and how to make it work. All the men keep licking their lips. Gorister explains that they have been stuck in the shuttle for 10 weeks, starting out with 30 men and are now down to 6. As 2 men grab Sartoris, Gorister explains that they did what they did to survive, implying cannibalism. A blast hits the shuttle and Sartoris breaks free. He realizes that the zombies learned from what he did and were getting into the ships and trying to fire. The zombies are surprisingly intelligent. While they are technically undead, they seem to retain basic human functions and instincts, and hence are not technically dead, but instead just having the human consciousness in them killed. Sartoris, with the distraction, is able to fight off the men, open the hatch, and throw Commander Gorister into the crowds of zombies, starting a bloody feast. And is throwing almost all the men, and throws the remaining men with the exception of White, and gives him mercy and learns from him that the tractor beam is keeping the shuttle from leaving. He then says for him to stay put while he starts going to the tractor beam. Using the distraction of the men getting eaten by a bunch of zombies, Sartoris runs to the zombies to disable the tractor beam. He pushes them aside, does everything he can, and is able to reach it. He finds a lift, but then feels uneasy. He looks down on his leg and realizes he's been bitten. Using the password Blackwing to access the record, Zahara finds the abilities of the zombie virus and is mesmerized by its ability to be smart, and goes to disable the tractor beam, finding it has already been disabled. Confused, she gets boxed on the bridge by zombies on the other door, with being distracted. Then the one on the X-Wing fires its lasers onto Zahara's room, causing it to explode. Trig, following who he thought was Kale into a room with a mountain of bodies, a zombie comes through the mountain and chases him. up the pile of bodies into a ventilation duct that leads to where Han and Chewie have crossed. The zombie catches up to him and Trig realizes it is Kale. Kale starts to climb over a stunned Trig to bite him. When Trig pushes Kale down the shaft into the turbine room, he sees Han, who tells him to climb down the catwalk. Meanwhile, the zombies at the bottom are shooting up at them and more accurately. Trig tries to climb and falls into the lifter when Sartoris was piloting. Sartoris flies around to get Han and Chewie. The overloaded lifter slowly descends into the crowd of zombies. In a moment of redemption, Sartoris gives Trig the controls and says, "Your father was a good man, unlike me." Then jumps over the edge into the zombies. The group flies to the bridge but find the bridge on fire and have a hand and presume Zahara has been killed. They get to a shuttle where they find White dead inside. They realize that he is burnt and heavily scorched. However, he is missing a hand. Confused, they ultimately shove him out, and Han and Chewie fly the shuttle when all of a sudden the zombie attacks. And since they don't have their blasters on hand, they can't do anything to do it. As the zombie approaches, however, it is shot by a blaster fire, and it turns out to be Zahara. Zahara explains that the hand they saw was White's, not Zahara's, and realized that he had apparently lost his hand trying to save Zahara, and badly burnt, he made it to the shuttle but ultimately died. Zahara stayed at the back, intending to reveal herself later, when the zombie came out, so she decided to instead save the men. However, when they were leaving, all of a sudden they realized that the zombies who had left the shuttle to try and take the virus out to the galaxy are instead crashing into each other and dying. Then they leave the ship, and as the zombies continue to die, they're relieved, as it means they're going to be no longer able to spread and the virus is going to die out. Zahara comments on White, saying, "A stranger saved me too," and says that he named the ship the Freebird. The crew fly off and reach a cantina in a different planet. Han and Chewie leave to get the Millennium Falcon back, which had been impounded, trying to get it from an auction. Zahara and Trig meet the wife of a guard who died on the purge and the note she had. She gives his wife the note, who cries a bit, but then asks them to come for some tea. Zahara and Trig ultimately settle on the planet, with Trig working as a farmer and Zahara being a nurse. The Star Wars universe is a complicated universe, one with many altering stories. This one in particular shows how ordinary people can be affected by the secret actions of corrupt individuals. This story is something that's meant to experiment on a wider concept, and as a result works extremely well in terms of its storytelling perspective.